And please don't forget to put yourself on mute unless you are the one speaking. All right. We'll go ahead and begin.
On this strange Sunday, we gather together in new ways, linked to each other through the delicate trajectory of electrons and through the invisible bonds of caring and love, sharing with millions the wondering and fear and uncertainty of this time. May each of us find our ground of strength and clarity. May each of us let our hearts break open to new ways of caring for our neighbor as ourselves. May each of us know, even if we are physically alone, that we are held in a great embrace of love. Let us join in community. Let us join in worship.
Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limits of walls, or for that matter, of what often binds us, restricts us, holds us back. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here together in space. I see you, hear you, I love you. And I like this chalice, a beacon of this community, holding us all together here, now.
All right, and this is a hymn we have done before, but I like it, and I found this version of it that is permittable for streaming. So I thought we would essentially listen, and if you kind of know it, hum along, but it's probably more of a listening one.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. 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 We are going. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. We are going. Whoa, yeah, yeah.
Thanks to everyone who shared, and will continue to light candles for the many joys and concerns in our lives, our community, and our world that remain in our hearts. I believe Carol is going to share with us this meditation.
And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart, reach out your words, reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch.
Don't nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis
Good morning. I'm Marty Pelham. I'm the minister at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in Watertown. I recognize many of you from when I preached about almost exactly a year ago in Utica, when I was at the time in my ministerial internship at First UU Syracuse. It's an honor to join with you today. I'd like to begin with reading a poem many of you are familiar with, maybe all of you, Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen ground to swell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time, we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game. One on the side, it comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me. And I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. I may have read this earlier in my life, but I feel I first engaged Robert Frost's poem, Mending Wall, during a class on the shore of Lake Winnipesaukee during my first New England winter 4 years ago. We read much of his work that week, but I think this one grabbed me because a part of New England I found especially beautiful were the rock walls of the countryside. I like rocks. I'm that person, if we go hiking or just walk through a park, I spend an inordinate amount of time looking down, looking for rocks, enchanted by them. They're strong, not actually eternal, but compared to my lifespan, they can seem that way. They're beautiful in their uniqueness. In nature, no two are exactly alike. I think part of the reason I'm captivated by rocks is because it has to do with my life circumstances. I lived the first 90% of my life in Central Florida, where there really are no rocks. We have seashells. Well, we have limestone, which is created from really old seashells, and it's mostly underground. Easy to mine and commonly crushed and used as a road base or a component of concrete. Useful, but not really exciting. Then I moved to a region that apparently grows rocks. I learned how on New England farms, after the crops are harvested in the fall, it gets very cold and the fields are covered in snow for a long time. Then, come spring, there is a new crop of rock in the field. Stones that need to be removed so the plowing and planting can happen. The spring reaping of stones needed to plant provided the raw materials for the walls I find so beautiful, many still standing 2 centuries after the largest number of them were built. I have learned that rock walls were rare in early New England. The oldest documented one was made in 1607, but most were not built until between 1775 and 1825, because it took that many years for the volume of the rock harvest to become a problem. They had rested in the ground since the last great ice sheet, but they were buried under thousands of years of composted soil and old-growth forest. The actions of the Europeans eventually caused the rocks to appear. Once a critical amount of the forest was clear-cut, the soil became much colder in winter without the ancient blanket. This led to frost heaving at lower levels and the gradual migration of billions of stones to the surface. Some farmers just dumped them on the most barren part of their land, and some farmers built walls. They were once everywhere. When many people moved west and abandoned their farms, trees sprouted again, and many walls became hidden from view. A University of Connecticut study using laser mapping found the remains of a former agropolis, a network of roads and stones hidden for over a century beneath a dense cover of oak and spruce trees. Building them took effort, and some were more enduring than others. The weakest walls were the ones made with mortar. They seemed stronger at first, but chemical reactions eventually weakened the stones and caused them to crumble. The strongest ones were a type called tossed walls, where stones were carefully stacked or woven together in 2 rows, and the middle space filled with rocks whose size or shape didn't quite fit anywhere else. They were tossed in. This may have been the type of wall in the poem. Some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. The diversity of the stones in the tossed walls meant they were more flexible in absorbing the stress of movement or impact. But despite the longevity of these structures, a rock wall requires mending. Whether due to vandalism from hunters determined to capture every rabbit who hides within them, or the frozen groundswell beneath them, rocks fall from the wall. The maintenance is hard work. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. I admired the effort that went into the mending even more after learning that most of the walls were not built to keep anything out. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines. I like to think the original makers of these walls were trying to create something with meaning. Out of the randomness of rocks, their forebears had unintentionally initiated. And I find parallels between these structures and our history as a faith community. While elements of Unitarian and Universalist belief happened in other times and places, the communities which led directly to the movement that we call Unitarian Universalism today were, in many ways, a unique creation of the northeastern region of this country. They were all started by some Europeans coming here and changing things. Despite many things they did which we see today as wicked, including taking the land of the Haudenosaunee by treachery and violence, they believed they had good intentions. They wanted to exemplify the kingdom of God. As with all human endeavors, there were consequences they probably never intended or imagined. They clear-cut forest of dogma and decrepit doctrine in order to grow a new faith of direct relationships between individuals and the divine. But once individuals' inner wisdom and emotions were made accessible as sacred sources, all sorts of independent ideas began to work their way to the surface. In common with those old rock walls, much of our Unitarian and Universalist history suggests that we were not designed to keep others out. And while there were at times schisms, arguments, and general obstreperousness, In this land, far from cathedrals and castles, monarchs and bishops, there was a sense of freedom to think and believe independently, to build new structures out of what was at hand. Eventually, we created a religiously pluralistic society unlike any other in history, including the movement represented in our gathering today. I believe part of the reason we Unitarians and Universalists endured is because our free church predecessors, intentionally or not, built a tossed wall kind of faith community. They were far from perfect, but over time they tried to weave together many different ideas and tried to find a place within the structure for even the oddly shaped ones. And they did it without the mortar of a creed. I believe that is why we can endure the times when the ground heaves up as culture and society change. But in this shifting and changing, ideas and people can fall away. If we are not in the habit of mending our wall, busy lives and urgent causes may grow up around us, and we can lose sight of those who once strengthened us. In the poem, the responsibility for the mending fell to the owners of the two properties which met beneath the wall. As a free church, we don't have hierarchical owners or any authority above us. The mending falls to each of us. Even when we have effective membership committees or trained pastoral care associates or great ministers, the mending falls to each of us. In the unique tossed wall community that we are, every stone, every member matters. The ground is heaving up beneath us right now. Not a day goes by that I do not hear or read of wall mending happening, sometimes in ways far removed from the hefty physical thingness of rocks. We're doing it right now. And I want to acknowledge that the people making the greatest effort in these online gatherings are often those in attendance who have never done it before and who may be climbing some steep learning curves in order to help keep this community mended. Every loaf of bread delivered to someone who must stay isolated, every expression of gratitude to those risking their lives to care for us, from grocery store cashiers to emergency room medical professionals, every phone call, every children's story delivered through some digital medium, every lesson taught online, from yoga to tuba to biology, every time we engage with others, every time we dialogue, every time we open ourselves to compassion and to learning from one another, though our spiritual fingers may grow rough with the handling, we mend our community and grow stronger and more beautiful. May it be so, and amen.
And we have another hymn performed and recorded by Bob. So it doesn't have any actual words being sung to it because we haven't gotten that far yet. But I strongly recommend that you stay on mute on your end and sing and dance and whatever on earth the Spirit moves you to do. Thanks all, especially Bob. That was fabulous. Well, we extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And I think Jack's got our benediction.
When you go out and see the empty streets, the empty stadiums, the empty train platforms, don't say to yourself, looks like the end of the world. What you're seeing is love in action. What you're seeing is that negative space is somehow is how much we do care for each other, for our grandparents, for our immunocompromised siblings, for people we will never meet. People will lose jobs over this. Some will lose their businesses, and some will lose their lives. All the more reason to take a moment when you're out on your walk or on your way to the store or just watching the news to look into the emptiness and marvel at all of that love. Let it fill you, sustain you. It isn't the end of the world. It is the most remarkable act of social solidarity we may ever witness.